recording again. Perfect. Are we at a position of more clarity now, David?
I think my understanding is that we are ready now to proceed to the vote, but I think that the Chief Financial Officer's maybe just going to clarify for the benefit of all members the respective sets of proposals and their financial implications.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Provost. So, members, in terms of the SNP proposals, they are as follows. To provide free school meals for primary pupils and half-price school meals for secondary pupils in 2025-26 and 2026-27 is £949,000 each year. Extend jobs and training by £1.5 million for each of the next 3 years. To continue 3 and 4 year old to continue 3 and 4 year olds clothing grants from the 2025-26 academic year, but change the value from £50 to £75. That is £60,000 in costs. Provide a non-recurring balance to support roads and pavements, £800,000, a 2-year funding of £200,000 in total to support businesses and town centres, £200,000, and provide funding to reinstate the Cat Play Park in Short Leys after vandalism, £70,000, and for funding for a feasibility and deliverability study for Woodroad Park, £30,000. Those options come to £3.6 million. There is some further changes. So £30,000 for a feasibility study for municipal transport was accepted. So that is £30,000 funded from finance and ICT balances. And at the same time, in the leader's speech, he made mention of the expenditure reduction cuts package in options 27 and 28, parking attendance review £45,000, parking charges £79,500. Those 2 elements will fall and be included in the corporate review of community safety and enforcement. That has a balance already of £700,000. That balance would fall to £575,500. That then shows that in terms of the proposals, there is a balanced budget of £1.6 million, with the whole of the uncommitted balance being consumed. The Labour proposal, again, a balanced budget, has a range of options. The provision of free school meals for primary pupils and half-price school meals for secondary pupils, £949,000. And hours-free parking in Kilmarnock at £586,000. An increase in the appointments at the recycling centre from 20 minutes appointments to 15-minute appointments, £80,000. Extending jobs and training, including summer placements, £1.5 million for the next 3 years. Clothing grants to 3 and 4 year olds attending early years establishments, £50. That's a total of £40,000. Provide an additional non-recurring balance to support roads and pavements, £500,000, and evaluate provisions for municipal transport, £30,000. That sees a range of options that all come back to both utilisation of early intervention and prevention fund, and also the use of the £1.6 million of the revenue that's available for members for the year that follows, Provost. So both are balanced, but both are different, and I'm happy to stop there and hand back to yourself.
Thank you, Joe. You've got a very good head in your shoulders, I have to say. Are we happy to proceed to the vote with that clarity? Leader.
The wider point is just not into the specifics, but just to kind of to wrap up, because I get the just. And I hope we can all get behind some of the points I'm trying to make here. I think Sally Coughlin just said the geopolitical situation will be challenging. That's an understatement, perhaps, Sally. I think we all recognise that. And, so will our demograph. Challenges facing the health and social HSCP will be, the IGB will be challenging. Indeed, we've already held down during the year. But to deliver the services without queues and without wait lists, it's going to be really difficult through the years. I'd like to thank officers you remember back, what, 2-3 months ago, this black hole that was a 20 million black hole. It's now an 8.75 million black hole. And that's not been exactly painless. There's real jobs, there's real services, there's real tough decisions that we've got to make. And there's real tough decisions and within the 8.75 black hole that we've got as well that we've managed to deal with. And these are really harder and harder political choices that we've got to make. It's no bureaucracy. It's no, if it was simple as that would be okay. You can see in the detail in these papers, these are people's jobs and livelihoods, and we don't take any of these decisions collectively, I would hope, lightly. The road ahead's as difficult as it's laid out in the report. We've got another £13 million behind for next year, and that starts now. And the year after that's 18 million. And these are all difficult political choices, and I hope we can work together as much as possible. That we'll all have our differences to try and deliver what's best for our communities. Members, there's things like, as well as the geopolitical situation, Brexit, the austerity, wasn't of your creation. And I think we'd acknowledge that. Inflation and all these other pressures, but we're left here as local councillors to deal with this. I think we'll broadly agree on a lot of things that we're trying to do in terms of, and certainly from my side, in terms of jobs and attacking poverty remains right up there because our communities are struggling out there and we need to do what's best for them. And so, Provost, I hope we can take that on board for voting today. Thanks.
Thank you, Leader. Yep, we'll hear from Councillor Douglas and we'll move to the vote.
Thank you, Provost. Without a doubt, it's a difficult budget settlement. We've rehearsed those comments, all of us, today, and will only get more difficult. And as I've mentioned in my speech, and the Leader mentioned in his, grant-aided expenditure is not our friend and is causing massive problems for this local authority and local authorities across the west of Scotland in particular. And any efforts that we can through cross-party, argue our case to Edinburgh, then absolutely I'm up for that, and I'm sure we can all agree that's something that urgently needed. Next year will be tough, I think even tougher. I said that last year as well, but it is tough. And it is, you're right, with £8.75 million worth of cuts, and they are cuts, let's be honest, they are cuts to the services that we would like to provide for the public of East Ayrshire. But there are choices. And there are choices that we've made. There's some very similar points, and I'm pleased to see the continuation of the half-price school meals for our secondary pupils and the introduction of free school meals for our primary pupils. Again, it would be great if government had stuck to what they said they would do and have paid for that. But here we are, and we are mitigating against promises that came from elsewhere. But it's worth doing, and it's the right thing to do, because as we all know, if kids aren't well fed, how do we expect them to learn? And I do think that has a massive role to play in improving the poverty-related attainment gap, because we do have real issues around kids with empty bellies, how we expect them to learn. So that's a really positive move. And as I say, the key difference here being the differences around increased recycling centre appointments, and the 1 hour free car parking in Kilmarnock for a year as a pilot are really what has come down between us here today. Not enormous differences, but I think enough that is significant, and I would like and more than happy to support the Labour opposition budget and recommend it to members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Right, I think we're at a position of clarity now for everybody and we can move forward with the vote. David or Julie? Yeah.
Just to confirm, given we've got the Teams facility, the vote will be by way of roll call. So Julie will call out and invite each member to confirm. And if you can indicate if you're voting for the motion by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor McMahon, or the amendment proposed by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Linda Maben. Julie.
Okay, thank you. Provost Claire Leach.
Motion.
Councillor Stephen Canning.
Motion.
Councillor Ellen Friel.
Motion.
Councillor John McFadden.
Motion.
Deputy Provost John McGee.
Motion.
Councillor Caroline Barton. Motion. Councillor Elaine Cowan. Motion. Councillor David Richardson.
Motion.
Councillor James Adams. Councillor Jane Sangster.
Amendment.
Councillor Ian Linton. Councillor Douglas Reid. Councillor Graham Barton.
Motion.
Councillor Graham Boyd.
Amendment.
Councillor Barry Douglas,
Amendment.
Councillor Neil Ingram,
Motion.
Councillor Peter Mayburn,
Amendment, please.
Councillor Claire Maitland. Motion. Councillor Jim Todd,
Motion.
Councillor Beverly Clark,
Motion.
Councillor Sally Cogley,
Amendment.
Councillor Kevin McGregor,
Amendment.
Councillor Linda Mayburn,
Amendment, thanks.
Councillor William Lennox,
Motion.
Councillor Alison Simmons,
Motion.
Councillor June Kyle,
Amendment.
Councillor Jim McMahon,
Motion.
Councillor Neil Watts,
Motion.
Councillor Joe Filson,
Motion.
Councillor Jennifer Hogg,
Motion.
Councillor James Kyle. The motion is carried by 21 votes to 10. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you, members. We got there, we did. Straight on to item 6, and it's building a future East Ayrshire capital investment programme review, page 99 of your papers. Again, almost same protocol as previous items, so I'll bring in the leader. Thank you.
No, as we mentioned earlier, and we mentioned yesterday, this is contract inflation and general wider inflation is having its effect in their ability to deliver the capital programme, but we continue to make progress where we can. It's absolutely frightening to see the costs that the Doon campus has increased another further 8 million that's been added onto that. But we want to deliver, and we want to continue to make the best opportunities for the young people at the Doon Valley as possible. We continue to make progress with that project. Similarly, it's good to see a bit of progress with some of the extensions in the Annick area where we're getting growth, and glad to see we get some money out of the developer contributions. Could do a wee bit more. Graham and friend our MDLs in planning can try and get some more money off developers to help us in terms of provide more money for schools and facilities which are really struggling in terms of capacity issues. But this is going a long way to address that. Members, I think we've spoken a lot about JEE, and I think the kind of capital programme reflects in areas of growth like in Annick, there's tremendous pressure. And in areas where there's population decline and outward migration in the Doon Valley, there's increasing demand. So, and it's that's maybe a microcosm of Scotland, and it's whether you've got an area of growth or an area that's suffering regrettably decline, we still really need to get resources round about these areas and address the two issues. So I think there is, as Barry mentioned earlier and others have mentioned earlier, there is a discussion needed to have by government to see that we get our fair share of JEE so that we're able to deliver right across East Ayrshire in terms of the capital programme. Great to see some of the developments in terms of the Kilmarnock Town Centre, in terms of John Dickey Street North and South, and also the White Tell building. Getting these buildings occupied and reused will really bring people into the town, and hopefully we can all get behind that and just make our major town Kilmarnock as vibrant as it can possibly be, morning, noon and night, and bring jobs and businesses that go with it. And great to see so many startup businesses. I attended a meeting, the opening of the new facility, new course space up and above in Portland Street. There's 20-odd small businesses in there, and I was getting told that night there's something in the region of in half a mile of Kilmarnock Town Centre. There's 300 small businesses. That's absolutely incredible what they're doing to make employment opportunities for people all over. And it's great to see that they've got this opportunity. And I think that's amongst some of the proposals within both the parts of the John Dickey Street development and the White Till building is for new enterprises to get in there. So that's going to be welcomed. So overall, it's a great report. but we know we're challenged. We'd like to do more, and I think we've got to put the marker down. We want to do in terms of a new school for the North West Kilmarnock. We really need to do that as quickly as we can, and we need to engage government, any agencies, and any other forms of funding that we can to do something about that and press ahead with kind of a decision and a start date as soon as we can for that school. With that, I would move the recommendations, Provost.
Thank you, Leader. Do you have a seconder?
Second that.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you very much, Provost. We discussed obviously this paper yesterday at Cabinet, and in particular I'm going to turn to the Doon Academy. You know, I think without a doubt the people in the community served by this school need some clarity. 10 years of it's a new build, then it's a refurb, then it's a partial refurb and rebuild. I think we need some clarity and we need some timescales, and I'm pleased that yesterday Simon was able to give us some clarity around the timescales there. And you know, let's make sure that we are consulting with I know we can over consult and other things, but in this I think it's really important to be absolutely making sure we're bringing the pupils, the parents, the teachers, the staff and the carers that are involved in that community and in that school, that they're given as much information as possible as soon as possible, so we can actually move forward with a programme that works at Doon Academy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Boyd.
Thank you, Provost. Just one small point in terms of finances. Expensive external consultants only when absolutely necessary, please. And I'm thinking possibly about the Palace Theatre as one example.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Linton.
Thanks very much, Provost. It was just on yesterday's Cabinet paper, particularly around the Galleon Centre. I think Dougie's highlighted some, you know, the positive actions that have been taken in and around Kilmarnock Town Centre with other buildings. And it was truly just by way of an update. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Amanda and Annika and Craig for the work they're doing. The TUPE process is well underway, and Oscar have received the dissolution of the Kilmarnock Leisure Trust papers, and hopefully that'll be on schedule for April. So, yeah, looking forward to getting started on the really exciting work of, you know, what the refurbishment is going to look like down the bottom of the town. Again, helping to the overall appearance of Kilmarnock Town Centre. Thank you, Provost.
Nice, thanks, Councillor Linton. Anybody else like to come in? MD online, Deputy Provost.
Hi, just regarding the Annick ward, it's nice to see that we're making progress on the Stuart Academy. But when we reflect back to the last council meeting prior to the local elections, we look at Ayrshire Academy, it would maybe be nice to see if we could start the work on Ayrshire Academy that wee bit earlier than is planned here, because I don't think folk the end of that meeting envisaged that it would just be maybe a refurb. And I ken there's other reasons and things have changed a wee bit, but we did go with the intention of infrastructure first. I'm quite sure they're going to mark that in my gravestone, but thankfully to Pamela Clifford at planning, and also with a meeting with Simon Bell and Andrew Kennedy the other day regarding the planning and the capital spend. But it would be nice if you could maybe kind of juggle it so that Laneshaw was kind of progressing before we're starting laying bricks in 350 new houses that a lot of folk were not too happy about. Thank you.
Good Deputy Provost. It's got really warm in here, isn't it? Anybody else want to come in? Thank you, Robert. I see you fixing things. Right, okay, so the recommendations for the Cabinet meeting of yesterday, or the paperwork is with you. I'll be happy to accept these recommendations. Smashing, thank you, everybody. Moving on to item 7 is our Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy for 25-26, pages 100 to 170 in your papers, and I'll bring in Robin to introduce the paper. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you, Provost, and good afternoon, members. This report presents today seeks approval of the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy, which covers the financial years from 25-26 to 2029-30, and it supports the earlier budget and capital reports. As you're aware, Treasury Management is undertaken with due regard to the Prudential Code for Capital Finance and SITFR's Treasury Management Code of Practice, and a key requirement of which is the production and approval of an annual Treasury strategy by Council. The strategy should set out the Council's intended approach to ensure that its capital investment plans are prudent, affordable and sustainable. It should confirm that the financing of the capital programme and cash flow is properly planned and that cash balances are appropriately invested to generate optimum returns having regard to the security, liquidity of the capital sums. In agreeing the strategy, Council is also asked to consider and agree a number of prudential and treasury indicators which are designed to provide assurance that the capital plans remain affordable, sustainable and prudent. These indicators cover the level of capital expenditure and the consequential borrowing required, the impact this has on the Council's capital financing requirement, which measures the extent to which capital expenditure has not yet been financed from either revenue or capital resources. This reflects the Council's indebtedness and therefore its underlying need to borrow. Indicators to ensure external debt is only for capital purposes and that it remains within a limit deemed as being affordable. It's termed the authorised limit, and it also set indicators of current and future affordability. Provost, without going into each table and figure in detail, I would highlight a number of the key indicators within the report. Firstly, at Roman numeral 1 in paragraph 15 of the report, we highlight the net capital expenditure of 242 million over the following 5 years has been approved and will require to be met from borrowing. This links to the capital report approved earlier, and it is the first prudential indicator. Given the implication for borrowing and debt levels, it has a significant influence for much of the Treasury activity and the forecast for the forthcoming years. Table 2 at paragraph 20 shows the Council's borrowing CFR continuing to increase as advances for the 242 million of unfinanced capital are made, with this projected to reach 782 million by March 2030. Table 6 at paragraph 30 of the report shows the Council's loan debt, which supports this level of capital investment, and it will increase from 469 million to 694 million as new loans are taken and existing loans are repaid, with reserves and balances of 88 million continuing to be used as a short-term financing. This will result in additional gross interest charges of around £16 million. Paragraph 41 to 48 highlight the investment aspects of the strategy and refer to the methodology for selecting counterparties with whom surplus cash can be deposited, the permitted types of investment, and along with the approved limits for each. The majority of cash surpluses will result from timing differences within the revenue activities, with grant income being received in advance of related expenditure, along with longer-term reserves and balances. Given the significant financial risk from a default, the 3 key principles that govern all of the Council's Treasury investment decisions and which remain at the centre of the Treasury strategy are security of the sums invested, liquidity, which is access to the principal sums, and yield, return commensurate with the risk. Ultimately, medium to longer term affordability determines if the capital investment plans are sustainable and prudent, and the report from paragraph 50 sets out the projection for capital financing costs, the debt charges for the period up to 31st March 2030, with a comparison to budget and overall revenue streams. This does show that the forecast position is that the general fund debt charges will be within budget by around 1.6 million or 1.3% over the 5-year period. However, it should be noted that from 29-30 onwards, these are higher than the budget level, and as highlighted in the budget setting report, this will require ongoing review of the Council's capital programme. Provost, overall debt charges for the General Fund are expected to be within the available budget in aggregate over the period, with these remaining below the affordability limit, which is 8% of the net revenue stream. Provost, with your agreement, I'll stop at this point. The recommendations which are set out at paragraph 2 are to approve the Treasury Management Strategy Statement and the Annual Investment Strategy, to approve the prudential indicators therein, and otherwise note the report.
Thank you very much, Robin. I will open it up for questions. Don't all rush at once. MD, any questions or any points for? You've done a really good job. Needs to get any questions, MD online? Okay. Are we happy to accept the proposals? Agreed. Thank you. At this point, we'll take an additional item that has came in. And it's just a request that's been received from the Labour Group for Councillor Sangster to replace Councillor Douglas on the IGB. And members, okay to agree with this? Perfect. Thank you. And on to our final item now, item 8. This is a motion by Councillor Jane Sangster, and I'll bring in Councillor Sangster to introduce our motion.
Thank you, Provost. So just to say, you know, we live in a democratic country, and a democratic country with freedom of speech, and thankfully so. With freedom of speech comes responsibility, and I think that is so important for us in the unique and privileged position of being elected members to remember that. We have a responsibility to our constituents to speak out whenever any government makes decisions that impact directly or indirectly any of our constituents in a negative way. So I think regardless of what political party you're a member of, if we don't speak up against any government decisions that we disagree with, be that the Westminster Government or the Scottish Government, then I believe that we do the people of East Ayrshire a disservice. So as a local councillor, I'm concerned about our government's treatment of the WASPI women. We have nearly 8,000 women across East Ayrshire that have been affected, and we recognise that these women will be hugely disappointed and probably quite angry that no compensation has been offered, and will feel that a simple apology is not enough. As a minimum, we believe that there should have been at least a commitment made that would have allowed for compensation for the WASPI women. We believe not accepting recommendations of the PHSO erodes public trust, and we would urge the UK Government to reconsider its position. We do understand the financial restraints that the Government is facing right now, and we request that when the economy improves, this commitment is followed through. So we, the Labour Group, would like to put forward a motion to ask the UK Government to look again at the Ombudsman's report and follow its recommendations to pay the WASPI women the compensation that they rightly deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sangster. Councillor Linda Maven.
Thank you, Provost. I'm very happy to support the motion raised by my colleague, Councillor Sangster. I agree that this should most definitely be readdressed by the UK Government. The Labour Government have made righted some historic wrongs already, the miners' pensions, the LGBT veterans, and I really sincerely hope that in time this decision can be another one that is righted. So I'm happy to second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Maven. I'll open it up for discussion if MD's got any questions or points. No? Oh, so, apologies. Councillor Jim Todd.
Thanks very much, Provost. I don't think that any of our colleagues sitting in the Labour benches here would imagine for a minute that they would be suggesting a motion attacking their own Labour government in Westminster over this issue. But in reality, it could have been any or all of the policy decisions imposed on Scotland that this motion could apply to. The 2-child cap, the WASPI Women's Award of Compensation, which in itself is peanuts compared with the nearly £40,000 stolen from them from the Westminster Government in the first place. The cold weather heating allowance for pensioners, energy costs that are rising, that they promised to cut before July, with £1,000, then £100, then £300. Now it's rising again. We have an Energy Minister in Ed Miliband, and I hope Councillor Douglas recognises that I've mentioned the Minister responsible, the same way that Councillor Richardson mentioned the Minister responsible in his comments. I think it did Barry no favours whatsoever with bringing that misogynist attack on one of our fellow colleagues
I know David Richardson, and that's the furthest away from what he is. And I think an apology is warranted, Barry. It's up to you whether you want to do that or not. So I thought GB Energy was supposed to save us money, only to find out it's a private company designed to take all of the energy produced in Scotland and redistribute it onto the national grid, only for those private companies to charge us for the use of that same energy produced here. The change that was promised from Labour in Scotland before July has not materialised the way that everyone thought it would. And I have said on numerous occasions to my Labour colleagues in the past that in order to win at Westminster, Labour would have to swing massively to the right in terms of politics. In fact, I had that very same discussion with Councillor Peter Mabin in the corridor last year. Peter was of the view that we shouldn't listen to any of the rhetoric coming from Labour HQ espousing right-wing policies, as that when they get in, they would reject those right-wing policies. Sadly, it is very apparent that they not only have adopted them, they have went further to the right. So I would like to propose an amendment to this motion, Provost. And I know that Jane's got massive principles, and I totally accept her reasons for bringing this here. And I propose that East Ayrshire Council write to our two MPs that serve East Ayrshire, asking them to reverse their decision to deny WASPI women the compensation they deserve and raise immediately this issue with the Prime Minister. That they both do what they said they would go to do on numerous occasions before the election in July with hunters of photos with the WASPI women, namely support WASPI women getting their compensation. That's my motion, Provost.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Todd. Councillor Clark.
I'm a WASPI woman. I found out because my friend phoned me in tears saying she had to nurse for a further 6 years. And I thought, well, she's older than me, it's bound to affect me. I've never had a letter or any official just stop paying it. Now, my friend was a nurse in a renal unit, and the pressure, I'm sure, contributed to her dying of a heart attack in the street, never having any pension. This is beyond an academic thing. People were made homeless and destitute. They actually, women retired the day before that came in and never knew, because none of us, or very few of us, were told. I think we're entitled 30,000 I've lost. Mm-hmm. And we had to move and open a guest house, a business, to keep us financially afloat. This is a huge tragedy, and I'll support anything or anyone that can change it and give us what we're entitled to, what we paid in for.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Linda Mavin.
Thank you, Provost. Just to reiterate and just to put Councillor Todd's mind at ease, where two MPs have already publicly spoken out in a Westminster Hall debate against the government's decision. Okay, thank you.
Point of order.
Okay, I'll grant you point of order.
Yeah, the two East Ayrshire MPs voted not to. I think there was one Labour MP in Scotland that voted against not giving the WASPI women their compensation. There might have been debates and there might have been talk, but it's votes that count. And those two MPs did not vote to give the women their compensation.
Well, because I think for you, and just to support your own attempts to keep members focused on the merits of the motion before us, the thrust of the motion is to ask the UK government. I don't know if Councillor Todd's amendment needs to be seen as a direct negation of that. I think we would normally copy local MPs into any correspondence we would send to UK government, so it may well be there's room there for a decision to be taken, because there seems to be general support for the nub of the motion. It maybe just comes down to who we communicate it to. I think as well, if we really want to get into minutiae in terms of competence, I don't think asking the MPs to reverse their decision would actually be logistically achievable because the vote's been taken in the Parliament, so there won't be another opportunity to take a different decision in the voting process. So it's maybe not about the one or two individuals, it's maybe about the UK government position, but obviously it's for members to decide where their support lies for both the motion and the amendment.
Okay, thanks a lot, David. Councillor Mabon.
Aye, thanks, Provost. Just to clarify, it wasn't a vote, it was a motion that was brought in. There hasn't been a vote, as a meaningful vote as yet. It was a decision taken by the Minister. So just to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like to come in? Oh, apologies, Councillor Richardson. Go for it. David, you can come in.
Thanks, Provost. I'm no used to being at home and normally come into chambers in person. I've got a wee bit of conjunctivitis this morning, then I might pass it on to Emily. So I don't know, I can't see how I can support this motion at all as it stands. I'm more in line with Jim Todd's counter motion, to be honest. I find this quite hypocritical, to be honest, because I think this is really just an attempt for Scottish Labour or Labour locally to try and show, listen, we're a wee bit different for Labour at Westminster. But what we've actually seen transpire over the last 3 or 4 months, it cannot be denied now that local Labour, or Scottish Labour as they like to call themselves, have no influence whatsoever at Westminster. Because whatever Sir Keir Starmer, and let's just call it English Labour or Down South Labour, whatever Down South Labour decide to do will happen. And the guys up here can say, well, wait a minute, we're Scottish Labour, we would have done something different here. It's been proven beyond doubt they have no power in Westminster whatsoever. So the crux of the argument here is the only way the WASPy women in Scotland are ever going to see any compensation is in a free, independent Scotland. Thanks, Provost.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Ingram.
Thank you very much. It was just really to make comment on. No, I applaud Jane Sangster and Linda Mabon for coming forward with this to show that they do not agree with the government's position, which must be very difficult to do given the fact that they're within the same party. The motion as it stands, I'm not sure exactly what we are being asked to do because it actually mentions we, the Labour group, would like to put forward a motion to ask the UK government to look again at the Ombudsman report and follow its recommendations to pay the WASPy women the compensation they deserve. So I'm not sure on the competence of us being asked as East Ayrshire Council to back the Labour group. I would have thought maybe the more competent place to do that, the best forum to do that would have been their national conference.
I think through you, Provost, I think it's implicit that the motion has been put forward to this council. It's an agenda item on the agenda for this council. It's a motion inviting this council, whether or not it's minded to do so, to support the ask of the UK government to look again at the previous decision not to pay the compensation. There's two schools of thought in terms of competence. It's absolutely, is it within the gift of this council if it's minded to decide to send such a communication to UK government? Yes, it is. So at that level, it's competent. And do thoughts and considerations of what other decisions other governments make have significance in this chamber? Well, yes, they do when they impact in the council. Does the political motivation for that have a direct relevance to the matter before you? Possibly not. It's the decision to not pay the compensation that this council's been asked to take a position in respect of, and that position is to write to the UK government and ask them to reconsider that. And it's also within the overall body of the motion clear in terms of not an immediate reconsideration, but at a future point when there's sufficient funds available. That's what's there. I don't think there's any issue with the competence. It's really now for members to decide where the support would lie.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. David, Deputy Provost.
I mean, it's a good job a few short months after the Second World War that the Labour government didn't wait for better financial circumstances before they started building council houses and implementing the NHS. However, I do agree that I don't think there's nobody in this room that's against the WASPI women receiving their compensation. And I think a lot of folk, certainly Labour, or former Labour members and Labour councillors and Labour voters are really, really disappointed in what's been decided. I mean, it would have been a simple thing just to accept the recommendations. And then when somebody says, how are you going to pay for it? They should just said, we accept the recommendations in full. So, I mean, I don't see, I can Councillor Todd, I accept the point he was trying to make. I don't see why we can't finish in a middle ground here and support the motion and inform the two MPs of the thoughts of the group that they've just left not so long ago.
Yep, thanks, Deputy Provost. Councillor Linton.
Provost, I've listening with interest, and I note it was an SNP amendment rather than that to fully support the compensation of the WASPI women, and it received the support of 10 Labour MPs, and I can see only one, Brian Leishman from Alloa and Grangemouth, as a Scottish MP supporting that motion. So I take Jim's point entirely that there was an opportunity there for both our local MPs to put their positions on supporting the WASPI women on public record, and for whatever reasons, I'm not here to defend them, so I can only leave it at that, is they chose not to. So there has been a vote where they could have displayed their support for the WASPI women, but they chose not to.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Linton. Councillor Jim Todd.
Thanks very much, Provost. I mean, this goes down to, we're talking, Councillor Cogley was right, things are coming down the road in the next couple of years of an international, global aspect. But the solution is here for everyone. And I'm going to talk about Westminster. The French legislator just this week have announced that they're going to introduce a wealth tax to those multi-billionaires, multi-millionaires, trillionaires now we're talking about. So, and that's with 75% of the support of the French people. They're introducing a wealth tax. And Rachel Reeves Barry, I'll say her name, has decided not to introduce a wealth tax. So that speaks volumes. You say one thing before, and Barry made promises that were made elsewhere, made a comment earlier. So those promises that were made before July have all fell by the wayside. The solution is there. The solution to make money, to get money, to pay the compensation for all the folk affected is there, and it's called a wealth tax. And that's what Westminster need to introduce.
Thank you. Like to remind every member, if we could just try and stick to the motion and the relevant points, because I think we could all batter on about politics all day. Absolutely, everyone is. Councillor McMahon.
I'll try and keep it as near as I can, Provost, in respect. Barry spoke earlier on about choices. This is political choices. No sooner than this week, and the UK government have removed 0.3% to the foreign aid spending, but it's going to impact severely on children that are suffering abroad. That is a political choice. The political choice could have been made the same way for the WASPI women, but the pressures that's come on them for abroad have now had its toll on them, and they've succumbed to increasing the defence spending. If I could turn time back to 2014, and the term was used, the branch office in Scotland, and that was from retiring leader in Scotland, Joanne Lamont, where the autonomy and agreements that were put in place as part of the independence referendum were not upheld, and she moved away, saying that she felt she was treated like a branch office by the Labour leadership. No my words, they were Joanne Lamont's words. Labour said in 2014 that we'd be better protected if Scotland rejected independence. In this union, we share resources to ensure hard-working people, pensioners, and those in need have equal economic, social, and political rights through the entire UK. That's proved not to be the case because it doesn't matter what we're saying up here. If they decide south of the border that that is not the case, then it doesn't happen. We have put forward proposals in the past that have been totally thrown away with no respect. This is political choice. They could have dealt with the WASPy women and funded it, complying with what the Ombudsman had said. Political choices. We sat in here and spoke about them today. There was an opportunity here to do that with the WASPy women, but I've not. I'll leave it at that, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Monaghan. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Provost. We seem to have gone round the houses. We were in 2014 and then we're in wealth taxes, which, you know, SNP putting that forward. That's interesting because I haven't heard any of your leadership say that. However, let's get back to the motion in hand. The reality is, I think everybody will have had stories or can relate to these women who have been impacted by the WASPy situation. And, you know, they are right to fight for what they see and are right to see as their compensation. Now, in that regard, I am pleased to support Councillor Sangster in her motion because this group and this party are not afraid to disagree with our government who we need to. And I would maybe encourage others around this chamber to remember that when they're dealing with their parties elsewhere in government or out of government. So the motion's there. There has been an amendment, I think, put forward by Councillor Todd, and we agreed if that amendment is valid, then I think we go forward. Either we go in that motion or we go in the amendment. And simple as that, Provost. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Provost, and I'll try and stick to it as well. I agree with Jane. I share her and her group's disappointment in their party and their government at Westminster. It was their political choice. We were told we would be at the heart of government, but it looks like our MPs won't be listened to and won't have a voice. It demonstrates the absolute democratic deficit of living in Scotland just now. I share the sympathy, but I would agree with the Provost motion. Thank you. Amendment, sorry.
I don't have an amendment.
I beg your pardon, Provost.
Not at all. Deputy Provost.
Aye, thanks. I mean, I must admit, when I seen the motion, when I seen the pre-agenda papers, I was very surprised it was a Labour motion. However, I'm not going to sit here in this chamber and vote against the motion, surprising as it was, that we want to write to the government to follow the recommendations and pay the compensation they deserve. And I think most of the folk in this room would want the WASPy women to get paid that compensation. Whether the motion came for a Labour Party or whatever, and the argument, did they support it, did they know? But I'll certainly not be voting against the motion because I think the WASPy women deserve their compensation. Thank you.
David?
I was just going to say, probably along the same lines, that from the entirety of this debate, and it's not for me to put words in any member's mouth, but no member has expressed the view that the WASPy women should not receive the compensation. Therefore, we have a motion that suggests the Council agree to write to the UK Government, ask them to give them that or reconsider and give them that compensation. And we've got a motion that an amendment, sorry, that we write to the 2 local Labour MPs asking them to achieve the same thing. And that doesn't necessarily feel like it's so yards apart that it actually needs to go to the vote, or that it'll be a good idea or reflect well in this council if that's the difference that goes to the vote on who we write to express a view on a matter in which all members appear to be agreed, but it's up to members.
Thank you. Leader.
I think taking John's point, I think we all support the sentiments behind it. But, you know, it does feel like a kind of political fix, you know, rather, you know, and would like to, you know, very much home to the fact that, you know, I believe that Jane is sincere, Councillor Science is sincere in what she's saying here. But I would like some assurances, no matter whether it's the SNP, the Liberal Democrats, the Labour Party, or some other faction that come away and support the WASPy women. I would like to see our 2 local MPs support that motion unequivocally, whether it's no matter who brings the motion forward at Parliament. And I would seek maybe something along those lines and seek reassurances from our MPs to support any future motion to defend the WASPy women in the manner that Jane's put down in her motion.
Well, in terms of process then, are you moving a second amendment? Because what we have is former Provost Todd suggesting that this council write to those MPs without that specific detail, because it's not in the gift of anyone in the chamber today to give that assurance, because the MPs aren't here. So I'm just trying to keep us to what's within the gift of the council. But if that's an amendment now to write to the MPs specifically calling for their support, then it maybe it's aligned with former Provost Todd or Councillor Todd's amendment. I'm just trying to be clear how many amendments we're dealing with here.
I'm sorry, I'm loath to ask for another recess, but even maybe 5 minutes just to kind of clarify. If we can get someone.
Right, right.
It's not about the need. You're the chair and you conduct the proceedings. So the question, I think it's easily clarified. It's if you've said, Councillor Reid, that the MP should be, that assurance should be sought. If Councillor Todd wants to amend the amendment to include that specific, that would be the way to do it, because his motion or amendment is that we write to the MPs seeking their support. So I don't know that you're that far apart. It maybe just needs clarified in the chamber.
Okay, so right. Okay, so what? Thanks, everybody. What I will do, I'll bring in Councillor Sangster and then I will grant a recess for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Provost. I'm more than happy to amend the motion to include contacting the 2 MPs.
Great. So can we maybe have that conversation?
Just speak to Jim just to see.
Right, okay. We're going to break 5 minutes, okay? And we'll come back.